In 2001, there was this brilliant inventor, Dean Kamen, and he poured over $100 million into this piece of revolutionary technology.
Right, the Segway.
Yeah, the Segway. And it was absolutely guaranteed to change the world, right? It was this engineering marvel. Steve Jobs famously looked at it and said it was going to be like as big as the personal computer.
Which is just wild to think about now, because, I mean, just a few years later, the Segway was largely relegated to a punchline.
Yeah, exactly. It was just for, mall cops and highly supervised tourist groups.
Yeah, a spectacular, monumental failure.
And why? Because the smartest people in the room completely forgot the most unforgiving fundamental rule in business. And today, on this deep dive, we are unpacking exactly what that rule is.
It's a crucial topic.
Right, because if you're someone listening who loves to upskill, you may be asking yourself, do you really need to spend 2 years of your life and hundreds of thousands of dollars on a formal MBA to understand how the business world actually works? Or is there a bypass?
I think that's the ultimate question for anyone trying to level up their career, whether you're climbing a corporate ladder or, starting your own venture.
Definitely.
Because we've been deeply conditioned to believe that business is this incredibly opaque, hyper-academic discipline, that it requires institutional blessing and, complex mathematics. But the reality is actually far more accessible.
And that's our mission today. We are pulling from Josh Kaufman's book, The Personal MBA, alongside some fascinating frameworks from Lean Six Sigma.
Right, to extract the foundational mental models that actually drive success.
Exactly. We're bypassing the academic fluff to give you a highly practical, self-directed crash course. We're going to talk about the core value, the hidden mechanisms of negotiation, why most of your workday is probably a complete waste of time, and how human psychology runs the whole machine.
Let's start right there, actually, with that concept of mental models, because the core philosophy of all this material is that you do not need to know everything about business.
Right.
And you certainly don't need to memorize 1,000 different esoteric management theories. You just need a conceptual framework for how things in the real world actually function.
I always think of Charlie Munger when we talk about this.
Oh, yeah, perfect example.
Right. Munger famously became the billionaire business partner of Warren Buffett. But he started as a meteorologist who eventually went into law. He had zero formal undergraduate business education.
None whatsoever. And yet he built this massive fortune. Munger's secret was really his approach to learning.
Yeah.
He relentlessly self-educated across a wide variety of disciplines: psychology, biology, physics, history, economics. And he constructed what he called a latticework of mental models.
A latticework. So instead of just looking at a problem through the single narrow lens of like a spreadsheet, he's layering multiple perspectives.
Precisely. Because if you only understand economics...
You miss the human element.
Exactly. You're going to miss the psychological reasons why people actually buy things.
Yeah.
And if you only understand psychology, you might ignore the mathematical realities of cash flow. Right. Because Munger understood the fundamental models across different disciplines, he could analyze deals faster and more accurately than an entire room of MBAs.
And that approach feels like the exact opposite of what traditional business schools often do, right? They get totally lost in the weeds of complex, PhD-level quantitative analysis.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, think about the 2008 recession. A major contributing factor was the reliance on these hyper-complex financial formulas, like the Black-Scholes model.
Which, for those who might not spend their weekends reading financial theory, is basically just a highly complex mathematical formula used to estimate the price of financial derivatives over time.
Right. And people spent years learning these massive formulas, but they became totally blind to the underlying reality of the housing market.
They couldn't see the forest for the trees.
Exactly. It's like trying to cook by blindly following a highly technical Michelin star recipe without actually understanding basic flavor profiles.
That's a great analogy.
If you just memorize the formula and suddenly one ingredient is missing, or the market behaves irrationally, you panic. You don't know what to do. But mental models are like understanding the flavor profiles themselves.
Right, once you fundamentally understand how acid balances fat.
Or how heat transforms sugars.
Yeah, you can cook a spectacular meal with whatever happens to be in your fridge. The models give you adaptability. Rigid formulas just make you fragile when the real world throws a curveball.
So if we strip away the complex formulas, what is a business at its absolute core?
Well, Kaufman boils it down to 5 interdependent parts: value creation, marketing, sales, value delivery, and finance. Take any one of those away, and the whole thing just collapses.
Let's look at that first one, value creation. Because if you don't have something people actually want, I mean, the rest is just noise, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Psychologically speaking, a successful product or service must appeal to at least one of 5 core human drives.
Okay, what are they?
We are biologically wired with the drive to acquire, to bond, to learn, to defend, and to feel. If your offering isn't deeply connecting to one of those evolutionary drives, people simply won't care.
Wait, I actually want to challenge that.
Okay, go for it.
Because I can see how a luxury watch appeals to the drive to acquire status, or, a social network appeals to the drive to bond. But what about something totally dry?
Look what?
Like, say I'm selling B2B accounting software. That's purely logical. It doesn't fit into feeling or bonding.
Well, actually, it fits perfectly into the drive to defend.
Defend? How so?
If you're selling accounting software to a mid-level manager, you aren't really selling efficiency. You're selling safety. You're helping them defend their job security by ensuring they don't make some catastrophic compliance error.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Right. Or you're appealing to the drive to acquire, like they want to acquire a promotion by saving the company money. Understanding which drive you are activating completely changes how you position the value.
That reframes it completely. And I guess this brings us right back to the Segway.
Yes, the Segway.
Dean Kamen had this incredible technology, but he crashed headfirst into what Kaufman calls the iron law of the market.
The iron law is brutal. It basically states markets that don't exist don't care how smart you are.
Wow.
Yeah. The Segway failed because it didn't solve a problem people actually cared about at a price they were willing to pay.
It didn't strongly satisfy any of those core drives. I mean, it was priced at $5,000, so it wasn't easy to acquire. It didn't make people feel cool. In fact, people felt a bit goofy riding it.
It definitely didn't help them bond.
Right. So it was this engineering triumph, but a total psychological failure.
And the iron law is cold and unforgiving. You just cannot force a market to exist. But if you do find a real market, people with a problem they are desperate to solve, you then have to package that value.
And there are essentially 12 standard forms of value, right?
Exactly.
We don't need to list all 12 here, but the big takeaway for me was that you don't have to just sell a physical product.
Not at all. I mean, you could create a shared resource like a gym where people pay for access to equipment they couldn't afford alone.
Or audience aggregation.
Right, which is what every social media platform does, gathering a massive crowd of people and then selling that attention to advertisers.
Or an option, right?
Yes, like a concert ticket,
Yeah.
which is simply the right to take a specific action in the future. Once you identify the form your value takes, you've built the engine block.
But an engine block sitting on a driveway doesn't do much. You have to get it running, which means marketing, sales, and value delivery.
Yeah, that's the engine of growth.
And I really love the distinction made in the source material here. Marketing isn't some dark art of manipulation. It's simply the mechanism of capturing attention and connecting your specific offer to those core human drives we just outlined.
Exactly. While sales is the mechanism of building trust and navigating the actual transaction,
Right.
and there's a really fascinating framework for negotiation here. In any sales conversation, whether you're selling a multi-million-dollar corporate software package or pitching a small freelance design project, you are always trading in 3 universal currencies.
Resources, time, and flexibility.
Yeah.
Break down how that actually works in practice, though.
So it's basically like a triangle. If you pull on one corner, the others have to shift. Let's say a client wants you to build a website, but they don't have the budget, meaning they're short on resources.
Okay, so what do you do?
To make the deal work, you negotiate for more time. You tell them you'll fit it in over 3 months instead of 1.
Ah, okay.
Or, if they need it instantly, meaning high demand on time, they have to give up flexibility on the scope of the project. They get fewer features.
So understanding which of those 3 currencies your client values most in that specific moment is the key to finding common ground.
Exactly. It demystifies the whole process.
That takes so much of the anxiety out of negotiating. It's just balancing the triangle. But, making the sale is completely useless if you drop the ball right after the check clears.
That happens a lot.
Yeah. And this brings us to value delivery. And here is where the Lean Six Sigma methodology just hit me like a ton of bricks. There is a concept called the 3-5-7 rule.
Oh, man. This one is a staggering reality check for anyone who thinks their business is running efficiently.
It really is. It states that in a typical unoptimized process, people are only actively working on the actual product or service for 3 minutes out of every hour.
Yeah.
The other 57 minutes are entirely consumed by delay. Wait, 57 minutes of delay?
Handoffs, waiting for approvals, context switching, searching for files, attending meetings about the work instead of just doing the work.
It's crazy.
It is 57 minutes of pure waste.
It makes me think of like a really busy restaurant kitchen. You could have this brilliant chef who cooks a perfectly seared steak in exactly 3 minutes. The value creation is flawless. But if that plate sits under a heat lamp for 57 minutes, waiting for a server who is, I don't know, busy hunting for silverware in the back room.
The food arrives cold and ruined.
Exactly. The chef's technical perfection doesn't matter at all because the value was completely destroyed by the delay.
That's a perfect visualization.
Yeah.
And the tragedy is that most companies try to solve this by yelling at the chef to cook faster.
Right.
Work harder.
Yeah, they try to squeeze the 3 minutes down to 2 minutes, which just creates massive stress and burnout. Instead, the focus should be entirely on eliminating the 57 minutes of delay.
And the tool suggested for this is spaghetti diagramming, which, I mean, sounds ridiculous, but it's brilliant.
It's very literal, actually. You take a floor plan of your workspace or even a map of your digital workflow, and you just draw a continuous line tracing the physical or digital movement of a process.
And when you're done, the paper looks like a plate of tangled spaghetti.
Exactly.
You suddenly see that an employee is walking back and forth across a massive warehouse 20 times a day just to use a specific printer. Or a digital file is being emailed to 4 different departments for redundant approvals before it ever reaches the client.
Right. By mapping it visually, you can reorganize the space or the software to eliminate that unnecessary motion.
You cut down the 57 minutes of delay, which simultaneously reduces overhead and drastically lowers the chances of someone making an error. It's an incredibly powerful mental model for efficiency.
But you can have the most efficient delivery process in the world, mapping out every spaghetti diagram possible. If your company's bleeding cash, none of it matters.
That's the invisible killer. Finance.
Finance is the fuel.
And finance is usually the part that intimidates people the most. But fundamentally, business finance is just about what you keep versus what you make.
Yeah.
The frameworks we're exploring demystify this by focusing on concepts like invisible opportunity costs, particularly when it comes to debt.
Give me a concrete example of that, because debt is usually just pitched as, leverage in traditional business advice.
Well, let's say you take out a massive loan to build a beautiful, state-of-the-art physical storefront. You view that debt as leverage to grow your brand. But that debt requires a fixed monthly payment.
Right, rain or shine.
Exactly. Now, 6 months later, a massive online trend hits, and your entire industry pivots. You desperately need cash to build a digital platform just to survive.
But you can't.
Right, you can't. Your cash flow is entirely locked up in servicing the debt for the physical storefront. The invisible opportunity cost of that debt was your flexibility. It made your entire system fragile.
It's like buying a massive, really expensive anchor. It keeps you securely in one spot, but you absolutely cannot sail anywhere new when the wind changes.
That's exactly what it is, but there's an even more critical element than the financial fuel, and that's the biological system running all of this.
The human beings.
Yes.
And this is where I actually want to pause for a second because I feel like there's a tension here. We just talked about the 3-5-57 rule. Optimizing every second, cutting out the delay, spaghetti diagramming our literal footsteps. At what point does this obsession with productivity hacks and optimization just go too far? Like, if we treat human beings like machines that just need their code cleaned up, doesn't that inevitably backfire?
It completely backfires. You cannot optimize a human being like you optimize a spreadsheet.
Thank you.
We are biological systems, not mechanical ones.
Mm-hmm.
Machines can run 24/7 at maximum capacity. Humans have energy cycles, circadian rhythms, and emotional capacities.
Right, we get tired, we get stressed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you try to run a human system without slack, meaning unstructured time, rest, and autonomy, the system breaks down. Resilience and energy management are just as important as time management.
It's the difference between being truly effective and just being exhausting.
Absolutely.
And this psychological reality applies directly to how we manage and work with others, too. You can't just mandate excellent work.
No, because influence is always more powerful than compulsion. Do you want to navigate conflict or drive change in a business, you have to understand interpersonal psychology. When people feel threatened, their reptilian brain takes over, they fight or they flee.
There's a framework mentioned in the source material for crucial conversations that provides a mechanism for bypassing that reptilian brain.
Oh, the fact-story path method.
Yes, fact story path. When stakes are high and emotions are running hot, you don't attack. You create safety.
How would you apply that in like a real scenario.
Okay, so say you have a colleague who keeps missing deadlines. The instinct is to walk in and say, you're lazy and you're dragging the team down.
Right, which instantly triggers the fight or flight response.
Exactly. So instead, you start with the fact, the objective, undeniable reality. I noticed you missed the deadline on Tuesday.
Okay.
Then you tell your story how your brain interpreted that fact. When that happens, it makes me think you aren't prioritizing this project.
You own the interpretation.
Right. And finally, you ask for their path. How do you see it? What's going on from your perspective?
That shifts the dynamic entirely. By separating the objective fact from your emotional story and inviting them to share their reality, you engage the higher-level problem-solving part of their brain.
You've turned a battle into a collaboration.
So if we pull the camera all the way back, we have these mental models. We understand the iron law of the market, the value creation, the three currencies of sales, the delivery pipelines, the financial anchors, and the human psychology.
It's a lot to juggle.
It is. How do we actually manage all of this at once?
Well, you have to view the business as a system. It is an interconnected web of inflows, outflows, and stock. If you try to improve one area without looking at the whole, you often create massive unintended consequences somewhere else.
This brings up another mind-blowing metric, the 450 rule. We've all heard of the Pareto principle, right?
The 80-20 rule, yeah, where 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts.
Right. The 450 rule from Lean Six Sigma is an even more concentrated, weaponized version of that.
Yeah, it states that just 4% of any business causes over 50% of the mistakes, the waste, and the lost profit. 4%.
Which means if you are sitting at your desk feeling completely overwhelmed by everything going wrong in your project or your department or your startup,
Paralyzing.
it is. But attempting to fix everything at once is just a mathematical mistake.
You shouldn't be trying to boil the ocean.
No. Systems thinking teaches us to find the vital few rather than getting bogged down by the trivial many.
Right.
You can use tools like a Pareto chart to categorize your errors or delays. Almost always, you will find that one single step in a 25-step process is causing 50% of your headaches.
Like maybe it's one specific software integration that constantly fails.
Exactly. Or one specific client archetype that drains all your customer service resources. You don't need to overhaul the entire company. You just need to laser focus your improvement efforts on identifying and fixing that tiny 4% bottleneck.
It takes this giant, terrifying concept of managing a business and shrinks it down to a totally manageable, targeted diagnostic task. You aren't guessing. You are diagnosing the system accurately and applying the precise tool needed.
And that is the ultimate value of building a latticework of mental models. But it's really important to remember that building this latticework is a continuous, lifelong process.
Yeah, you can't just listen to a deep dive or read a book and assume you've mastered it.
You have to constantly experiment and test your assumptions in the real world. Feedback from the real world is the only way to actually upgrade your models.
Well, we've covered serious ground today for you, the listener. From Charlie Munger's interdisciplinary genius to the absolute unforgiving reality of the iron law of the market.
We really have.
We've mapped out how to deliver value by hunting down those 57 minutes of hidden delay, and we recognize that a business isn't just a collection of cold financial formulas.
Right. It's a living, breathing, biological system made of human psychology and physical processes.
It all comes back to recognizing the reality of what is in front of you rather than the theoretical formulas you wish were true.
Absolutely.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a completely different angle to mull over. We've spent all this time talking about businesses and companies, but apply this strictly to yourself.
Your own career.
Yes, think about your own career as a business of one. You are the product. Now imagine a future which is rapidly becoming our present, where artificial intelligence can instantly handle the value delivery part of your job.
That's a scary thought for a lot of people.
It is. If AI can write the code, generate the report, or draft the legal brief without those 57 minutes of delay, what is your competitive advantage?
If the delivery is commoditized, your survival depends entirely on the other parts of the system.
Exactly. Are you solving a problem that the iron law of the market actually cares about? Can you navigate the psychology of a crucial conversation better than an algorithm? Or are you banking your entire career on being a slightly faster gear in a machine that's about to be replaced entirely? Don't just optimize your current job. Figure out which of those 5 core parts makes you irreplaceable and start building your mental models there.